The question we are pondering today, you might be wondering yourself, is how do I become more embodied? How do I even start the journey to being embodied? How do I create, build, and nurture an embodied business? Well, I have a list. It's a long list, but it's a starting place. Here are some of the resources that have supported me on this long journey. Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown, The Art of Forgiveness, Loving Kindness and Peace by Jack Kornfield, Shambhala, The Sacred Path of the Warrior by Chogyam Trungpa, The Diamond Cutter by Geisha Michael Roach, How Not to Be Afraid of Your Own Life, Susan Piver, who I love and have met in person, The Lost Art of Good Conversation, Sakyong Mimpam, Emotional Chaos to Clarity by Philip Moffitt, Dancing with Life, also by Philip Moffitt, I Need Your Love, Is That True, Byron Katie, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, Yuval Noah Harari, one of my faves, The Practice, Seth Godin, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which is a book of values if you haven't read that, Mark Manson, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, probably one of the first books on business and leadership I ever read. Almost every page is dog-eared. The Mindful Leader, Awakening Your Natural Management Skills Through Mindfulness Meditation by Michael Carroll. Here's a resource that I lean on a lot and share with my clients and teachers, The Creative Habit, Learn It and Use It for Life, Twyla Tharp. A little bit more on the nerdy side, Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection by Deb Dana, who I've also met and interviewed and who is a lovely human. Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve by Stanley Rosenberg, also one of my faves. The Teaching Brain by Vanessa Rodriguez, who is someone that Anne went to college with, Harvard with. Presence, Bringing Your Boldest Self to Your Biggest Challenges by Amy Cuddy. A book that is so close to my heart as perhaps the very first moment that I actually considered what it meant to be a teacher, The Courage to Teach by Parker J. Palmer. And a body of work and a practice that has supported me incredibly deeply through lots of life transitions, including 2 years of postpartum depression, Offering from the Conscious Body, The Discipline of Authentic Movement by Janet Adler. Today, Anne and I are having this really rich conversation about what we have done to nurture our embodiment and create an embodied business, and also exploring how different our approaches are. I think that you are really going to enjoy this conversation and get a lot out of it, and I hope that you do. I hope that you are continuing to be pushed at your edges and asking lots of meaningful questions that are changing the way you think about yourself and your business on a daily basis. And without further ado, let's jump into episode 3. Okay, here we are. Episode number 3. It's going so fast. I know, it's going so fast. And you said something to me yesterday that I loved. And it was something like that the podcast is bringing out in you something totally unexpected. And I actually can't wait to hear more about that. But what I said to you was I can totally feel that. And one of the things that I'm loving about this is how I feel like it's a new dimension of our partnership and collaboration. And I think that speaks a lot to what we were talking about last week, right? We call it distributive cognition, right? The way we can experience ourselves and our ideas and the world differently when we are in conversation with another person. And I feel like we've just opened the door to some new room in our mansion of collaboration. Yeah, so we're really glad to be here with you. We are, as we knew we would, making changes to the format of the podcast. We're learning a lot. We're kind of exploring a lot, and we want to introduce today not only this awesome topic of emergent embodiment, and really what we're talking about is what I kind of humorously think of the practice of practicing the practice. It's this kind of orientation to emergence, right? Not like setting a goal and arriving and having it be static, right? There's like this continuous unveiling of a level of intelligence, and in this case, we're talking about embodied intelligence. So that's our topic today, which I'm excited about. But we also have a new element in the podcast that we are going to consistently start with. Now, at this moment, we're calling it Real Life Riff. And that could change because we are emergent. But we really want to take time in each episode to share with you what's our practice, in progress, what's in progress, what are we working on, what's relevant. And so I'm actually going to hand it over to you. Not that I'm being chicken shit or anything, but I'm going to let you go first. Will you go first?
I'm totally happy to go first.
What's your real life riff? What's going on in your work, in your world?
So I would say, as someone who has two businesses, that of the master's program, which I am loving, and also the Pilates, brick and mortar Pilates studio that I have. And I think what I have found immensely, I have an older stepdaughter, and I recently had two children, and they're younger, and it's like you love one and then another one comes along, and you love it just as much, right? And what happened is I love my Pilates studio. It's been, it's 20 years old this year, and man, do I love the master's program as well, which is another business that Chantel and I have. But what that brings me to is, again, I think I've brought it up before, that in the past, I think because I started entrepreneurship so young, I really thought that to be taken seriously, I had to have a separation. Mm-hmm. So a separation between, professionalism, and a separation between the embodiment that I experience. And so what I have found is that separation has sort of kept going, has repeated itself many times in my life. So I have also seen a separation of like, well, this is one business and this is another business, and they're very, very separate. But the reality is I'm a whole person, as we all are. And what I found to be so amazing is how much the running the business of the studio affected running the business of the master's program, and also running the business of the master's program has influenced running the business of the studio. Mm-hmm. And where I'm at this week right now is I'm really playing around with orienting myself around exactly how I'm going to offer an in-person, sort of like a VIP day at my Pilates studio, and really trying to work on that. And lo and behold, most likely we'll be diving into embodiment. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But that's where I'm at. And just so trying I don't, as a creative being, I don't want to separate things as much anymore. And I'm excited to be stewing on that and coming up with that.
Yeah, that's so great. I know it's been a big another transition for you because you just lost your studio manager. You've hired and are training a new one right now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I was just thinking. I'm not sure that I can pinpoint one thing, so I'll just share a couple of things that are going on for me. I taught my first in-person workshop this past weekend in Cleveland on the vagus nerve, and I haven't taught a group in person quite like this in about 2.5 years. You know, like pre-COVID. I was at a festival last summer, which was really great, but that was fabulous. I wasn't nervous about it. I was excited about it. And I think because you and I, we've had, so much of our work, and particularly for me, so much of my work has been online for so long. I think I had kind of forgotten how lovely it is to be with people. And so that happened, and that was fabulous. And there was a moment actually where I was doing some private work with some of the attendees the day after, and I was like, what the hell? I don't know how to do this anymore. I was like, what are they expecting of me? What am I expecting of myself? Like how is this even going to happen? But, as always, I find my way to it. And what was interesting was in the work that you and I do, a lot of mentoring and coaching, right, on the business side of things, strategizing, educational design. But we're also, I feel like, equally balanced in like how do you listen to yourself in a different way, not just from an intellectual perspective. And so I feel like I did this really cool thing where I asked the teachers who I was working with, it was, one teacher at a time, like what is the resistance right now for you in doing the thing that you most want to do, like really expressing your deepest desire, like what's the block, what's the roadblock. And then we did some movement around that, like where is it, how does it feel, how does it express itself, then how do we unwind it. But just like giving it a name and identify it in the body allows us to have this secondary way of like checks and balances, which is so cool. It's like I'm not just intellectualizing a problem, which we're told is the right thing to do, right? In our bro world, we're told that you got to think your way through everything, analyze everything, be pragmatic, be rational. It's like, well, yes, but your body has some wisdom to offer, right? And it can keep you from being overly what's the word I'm looking for? Overly like sterile, like overly clinical. Like it has a lot of wisdom. And so we really worked with like, what's the experience of the resistance in your body? How do you unwind it? How do you take care of it? How do you acknowledge it? And then where is the desire in your body? And how do you take care of that? And how do you acknowledge that? And then because I really wanted them to come away with a thing they could do to guide them, right? And we talk a lot about in our work creating autonomy, self-efficacy, self-advocating, right? Because you can't just always rely on somebody else to give you the answers. Just like you can't rely on your intellect to be the only thing that gives you the answers.
I love that.
So I know, and it was really great. And I literally came up with it like on the drive to the studio. Which is fabulous. I mean, it also it's
true to Chantel's style.
I know. I'm going to turn my mic down. Holy cow. I realize that yes, that is just largely the way I like to work, which is more from a place of spontaneity. But that's maybe just like what's on my mind. I've been reflecting a lot on that, and I think that one of the reasons why I can do that both in like a very short time frame, last minute, but also come up with something like that is because I have been practicing the practice of practicing being embodied for a long time. And it takes a long time. Like, I hate to break it to you, but it's not an overnight job.
Mm-mm.
It's not a one night stand. It's like, you got to be committed. And I was sharing that with the group in the nervous system work too. It's like, I think it took me 2 years of doing the work, the nervous system work consistently. And there are two things at play. One, it took 2 years for me to really notice it, because it was a moment of like complete melting down, life transition, trauma, drama, trauma. pick one of the words. And I realized, like, I'm recovering quickly. I'm making choices differently. I'm not staying in a state of fight or flight, um, or freeze. I was like, oh, this shit really works. So 2 years it took me. And again, it just took me 2 years to notice, or it took me 2 years for it actually to make an impact? I can't like say for sure, but it does take time. I guess the other thing in terms of what's in progress right now, there was something else I was going to share. I was going to share this because I think it's relevant for a lot of our folks in the embodiment industry, health, wellness, is sometimes like, what's the voice from which we speak, and share and connect? And so if you're in the online space, online marketing, quote unquote, is a part of what you do, right? And the way Anne and I talk about it is connecting, right? Connecting and nurturing. But the thing that keeps coming up for me in our work, and Anne and I have been in conversation about this, is I am designed to be an instigator. And yet what doesn't work is when I get up on my high horse and I start proselytizing, right? And I start like, I'm like Jesus on the mount, like saying, like telling you how it's supposed to be. And so that's something that's emergent for me, is I do have a very strong opinion about most things. I do feel very strongly. Anna's smiling. If you're listening to this, she's smiling. And so I've really been working with how do I instigate, but from a place of my ultimate goal is to empower the listener to take action from a place that is motivated inside of them, right? Instead of like holding a hot poker to your butt and being like, move in this direction because I know it's the best direction. So I think that will probably feel relevant for a lot of you listening. Like, how do you cultivate a genuine voice? So that's just something I've been working on. And this morning I wrote a love letter to people about like the shame and the pain of not fulfilling your desire or dreams because you don't know how, And so it felt like that was a really powerful place to speak from, that was instigating, but not from a hot poker place, not from a soapbox. Anyway, that's a lot, but that's you're getting some pretty powerful insight into the way my mind works. Sorry about that. In any case, that's real life riff. What do you?
No, I think it sort of leads well into the topic we wanted to approach today, which was, how we grew into our embodied businesses. And
Mm-hmm.
it took me a while to trust that embodiment part of running my business. It didn't happen right away.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned something in it. You said how long, there's a length of time that it takes to 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 become sensitive to your intuition and and to the nervous system state of your body, or all of the languages that we can apply to that. Um, and I would add that I think that our bodies speak to us differently over time, over development. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very sure our 4-year-old bodies spoke very differently to us than our 40 plus year old bodies, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are like how it chooses to communicate to us, because over time, maybe we ignored it, but maybe we didn't ignore it when we were 4, right?
Mm.
um, and how you really do have to rely much more on your sensory experience as a young person, because there is so much knowledge you just don't know, and that sort
Well,
of
that's,
flip flops as you age.
yeah, I was just thinking like, you don't even know that there's a choice, right? Like when
Mhm.
you're little, you just don't even know that you could actually differentiate between the ways in which you are interpreting information, right? When
Mhm.
you're little, you're just taking it all in through your body. Like you don't have the cognitive experience to isolate and analyze, which I
Mhm.
find kind of interesting.
Yeah, you don't have the language yet, the broad vocabulary to
Literally.
articulate, yeah, literally your feelings,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think about, and that sort of leads me to this next thought, which is that for me, it was it was almost easier for me to say, because I had shut down my intuition for a while. It was easier for me to sort of start listening to my intuition again through the domain, or through the lens of thinking about my business. Like,
Mm.
for some reason, that was just easier for me, because I was already like working on my business. I wasn't working in it, which I'm thankful for.
Right.
um, and really working on it. And so when you're working on your career, yourself, there is a portion of self-development there, right? And growth. And what I feel, and I suppose this goes back to the riff, but I feel like what's happened for me is, it's almost like a lot of times I'll play with new things or new identities within my work, within my business, and then I apply them, and I go, oh, actually, wait, I can actually do this in my personal life too.
Mhm.
And I think maybe that's just because I've been an entrepreneur for nearly half my life at this point, or almost half, maybe
Well,
actually half my life.
your entire adult life, you
My
have
entire
been,
adult life, yeah.
yeah.
And so, yeah, so it has been my place of experimentation and in, and creativity, really.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if there are others who have this similar experience.
It makes me think of like, did it feel safer for you to, or
Definitely.
safest?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Because it's like, it's
I mean,
that
that makes
separate,
sense. Yeah.
it's business, so it's not as personal, right?
Yes, yes, yes. At the
So
end of the
try it out
day,
there.
you can go home and be Anne at home with your husband and your family and your friends, and you don't have to like, like if you fucked it up,
Yeah,
you don't,
which
you're like,
totally
what?
happens.
Right. No, I get that. I get that. So for me, as you know, I've had the opposite experience.
Right.
I mean, um, I have been naturally inclined, I think, my entire life to be without separation of those things. Like I have always deeply desired a connection between like expressing who I am, but being seen for who I am in all aspects. of my existence. And I have maybe gotten like that's been challenging too. Like looking for somebody who's in a business relationship for me, and I'm exaggerating this just a little bit, to like understand who I am. It's like, well, they don't need to understand who I am. They just need to do we just need to do good, good business together. I have I have learned the difference. I have learned how to navigate, because in our previous conversations about this episode, we were talking about, and I know you are going to talk about this, and I hope you do, which is like feeling too much, right? There is like, we need to, that's why it's emergent, right? Because I don't know, for those of you who are listening, for me, I do this big pendulum swing. Like it takes this big pendulum swing for me to figure out then eventually, like, what is the middle, or what is the swing that's healthy? Because balance is not static, right? It's a
Mm-mm.
swing. But so what is our swing? What's the healthy pendulum? Um, so I feel like that has been a challenge for me, of like longing for, in a very intuitive way, always having integration. And
Mm.
how does that, like, what does that mean for embodiment? um it's like a constant desire to feel in my body affirmation of the rightness of a thing.
Mm.
And that's not bad, it's just a lot, right?
Well, and it's a lot all the time, right? And
Yeah,
in every context, in every domain, at all moments. And it's
yeah.
very interesting to hear you speak to that, because I think I was, again, coming at it from a different perspective. Well, these are separate. And
Mm-hmm.
and hey, I'm not going to go for, you know, occasionally, but not too many lunches, brunches, be bestie friends with a client of mine who's paying me X amount of money, to take Pilates for me, or et cetera, or is, for the services at my businesses or whatever. And but then that also, because I thought that that was protecting both. I thought it was protecting my personal life because it was separate, and it was protecting my professional life because it was
Mm-hmm.
separate. And so if anything went bad or sour, neither one would have a ripple in it, right? Which we know isn't true,
No.
especially as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's for me, I think it was coming from a place of, trying to find a way of being secure and of being safe.
Yes. 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 I was speaking to two of the business owners and teachers who attended the Cleveland workshop um, afterward, and I was having kind of this epiphany of like, uh, what is an interesting and maybe unusual juxtaposition inside of me is that although I have always had this deep desire for being understood and integrating, and like I need it to be all or nothing kind of. Um, I am not one of these people who you might call yourself an empath. Now, I do, I think we misunderstand that term, and I think we overuse that term.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure that it's a thing, and please don't hate me for saying that, but it's like a sorry, not sorry moment. I don't feel that way. Like I have really clear boundaries. So I'm not one of these people who longs for affirmation or integration within like myself and my contexts without boundaries. I am really clear. So for me, like to your example of like going and having lunch or coffee or something with students, like I would do that frequently and easily without ever feeling like there was an obligation for like now I'm your best friend and now I have to give you a discount. But I do think, so let's ask the question, how does that apply to our embodied intelligence? That's what I'm curious about for myself. I don't know what the answer is, really. But how do boundaries or our either a proclivity for separation, like Anne is talking about, or our proclivity for integration or connection, like I'm talking about, what does that say, if anything, about our embodiment? Long pause. Yeah, I don't I don't know. I don't know. But here's the starting point. Wherever you are starting, the answers only come with practice. Like they just only come when you're in the question, right? Like you can't answer that question unless you're attending to it, and that takes practice. I want to share. I have and I can't pick it up. It's too tall. I took a picture of it and posted it, but it's in, maybe I can point my computer screen at it for a moment. See this big stack of books. I was thinking today as we were preparing for the podcast, I was thinking, like, what are all the tools that have been supportive of me in creating an embodied business? And they are varied. But I want to point out a couple that, for me, as somebody who is drawn toward integration, and connection and not separation, the things that have been really powerful for me are the strategy, science-based, clarifying, formulaic things, which is not what I'm naturally inclined to want to do, right? So one of the books that has made the biggest impact on me is a book called The Mindful Leader by Michael Carroll. I read that a long time ago. And it comes at leadership and business building and team building from a Buddhist perspective, a mindfulness perspective. But it really allows us to see, how do we, in a healthy way, bring our whole selves. And as you may have gleaned at this point, that is what I feel like is the most accurate, or at least relevant, definition of embodiment for me, right? All the parts of you. How do you bring all the parts of you to business? Well, it's got to be thoughtful and strategic, right? We have to understand how it impacts the different aspects of our business. So that one. And then, of course, we were just talking about Gay Hendricks, who's the author of The Big Leap and the Genius Zone, or the Zone of Genius. I can never figure it out. I should probably just look it up. It's like giving structure to intuition, right? And you talk about it slightly differently. Like your language is a little different, which I love, which is what? Data and intuition.
Yes. I think that's sometimes, like, if I'm able to, it's like my intuition has to orient around something.
Yes.
Not always, but I think in a way that's, if I want to sort of ritualize using my intuition, I think starting at a data point, whether it's your daily sales coming in, or your students, or connecting to them, or looking at your customers or clients, whatever your terminology is for the people you work with, those types of things are very supportive through me. But
yes.
but I also, for as long as I can remember, have always just had a lot of ideas coming at me all the time. And so it's just a matter of, which idea do you choose to practice now? Because not every idea you need to move on in the moment. um, has been helpful. Yeah, I feel like it's funny because like when I think about my expansion into the embodiment of business, like, well, first I just, became, because I started in the Pilates business in the health and wellness field, of course, I just, like Chantil, we were both just, let's get really good at what we do. So, check that box. And then I was like, okay, well, now I care about the business side of it. At first, I really valued my business for the freedom it gave me. I had tons of freedom in my 20s, lots of travel, you know, really leveraged my studio for lots of those kinds of goals. I didn't have a lot of, to be honest, money goals at that point. I had Pilates, the amount of money I made teaching Pilates and running my studio was just fine. Of course, that shifts with as you age and with children. And so then I was like, okay, well, now I need all these systems to build my business. So, my first go-to was investing in systems, but th- that felt that didn't feel like I was stretching myself in the way that how do I listen to that didn't feel as scary or as risky as saying, how can I now listen to my body and my intuition and use that to steer the systems and strategies that I'm now going to use to run the businesses. It was like easier and felt safer and more secure, I think, just to learn the systems and strategies. And so I feel, from a person who's come from separation and longing for wholeness more within my work and my life, is that finally stepping into that piece of embodiment and intuition, because I did that in teaching all the time, right? But it felt a little more natural. It's not like that hasn't been done before, but it hasn't been done in running a business for me personally yet, like determining sales and strategies and who to hire and what systems to use. And I mean, certainly to hire, there was kind of a feeling, but I do feel like that has been a really, really fun growth edge. And it's a little bit fun to sort of leave that the strategies are not always the pinnacle, right? The apex of what's best. It's like, okay, well, now you've got them. Now we need to learn to massage them and, listen to your gut and listen to your whole self and listen to all parts of you. And so for someone, I imagine some of you listening, some of you might feel like you align more with my experience, and some of you are going to align more with Chantil's experience. And the way that I was able to start to kind of step in really purposefully step into embodiment practices to run my business, not just, oh, I have this great idea and I'm going to run with it. Because I've been doing that a long time. I mean, like cultivating, ritualizing, honoring, making space for, making it a part of my practice of running the businesses with embodiment is, I started with meditation through something called a Calm app. And as someone who has fidgeted her whole life, has a really hard time sitting still, probably why I got into Pilates for a while, teaching for so many years. You don't have to sit still in that job. That felt a little hard, but I don't overthink it. I'm not trying to be an expert meditator. I just know that if I can just do 10 minutes, I can feel that I get into a different place.
Yes.
a different headspace, and a different embodied space, because my physiology changes. We know through research our brain changes, our amygdalas shrink when you are an expert at meditation or have practiced for many years. But and then so I'm kind of going to share a little my ritual of this. So the meditation was a key. And then I actually started feeling the physiological effects. It's like riding your bike. It's like once you kind of have that meditation bliss or moment, you're like, oh, that's it. Okay, now I could go back to it. And then I've also been learning the nervous system work over the past, my goodness, it's been a while now. It's probably over 18 months that I've been practicing that as well. And so I think having multiple entry points into that sort of body awareness was good for me, because I feel like I had sort of stamped it down, despite the fact that I taught Pilates. I didn't stamp it down in my ability to connect with others, but more in my ability to connect with my own self.
Yeah.
And so I also have practiced journaling then about the business. So going back to episode 1, I believe, which is, what is your business asking of you?
That's right.
I have found to be very supportive. And as someone who has had multiple random injuries in her life and got into Pilates because she had an injury, if my body's speaking to me, I say, okay, body, what do you need from me today? So I have this one journal, and I can't really separate. It's not like I go to my body journal and then I close that journal and then I go to my business. Like, honestly, I was trying to do that for a while. Another example of how I'm always trying to separate things. I'm like, this is like my personal journal and this is my business journal. And I'm like, I just no. So you're like, why the hell would you do that?
That's so fascinating.
I just, even talking it out, I've realized that. So now I'm like, it just doesn't, it's not necessary. And that separation is not in support. Right. And so that's been really, and it's a behavior that I didn't even realize I had. Right. It's like, it's this like unwinding. So I've been kind of geeking out about my own, I think, you can operate on autopilot for a long time, and it's kind of exciting when you can shake yourself loose of that.
Yeah.
And so, and what does this look like? I don't have my whole morning free. Everyone has a season in their life. I'm in a season of young children, so I have to do the drop off and the get them together and out the door. And then so I'm not really even entering into this practice until like 9:15 in the morning. It's not like I'm doing it when the sun pops up. It's just not. Someday I'll do that again, but just right now I'm not. And whenever children start sleeping in. But so I just think, that if you're finding yourself, if you've been you think you said the proclivity of separation, what are some of the things you can do in practice to sort of bring you back to that wholeness? And those are some of the steps that I've taken. And I've really liked it. And I will say one other thing. It's really funny when, as a person who teaches embodiment, or let's say you don't teach embodiment, but maybe you're a person who's suffered from pain, and you're listening to some sort of meditation, and they're like, just go into your body because you're never in your body. And you're like, no, I live in my body all the time, and my body's not a happy place. Like,
it's not safe.
Yeah. Some people have that experience, and I feel like that's not acknowledged a lot. Like, there's always this acknowledgement of like, you're all in your head all the time. You're never in your body. And then when you get to your body, it's this great place. And it's not a great place for some people. If you've had trauma, if you've had pain. And
or
so
autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
Or like all kinds of things, anything.
Women's health, fertility, whatever. There's a lot there. And so I kind of wish sometimes that there was some more acknowledgement about that, because it's always like, or like if you're at a healthcare practitioner, they're like, well, just do yoga or Pilates. You're like, but I do that for a living. And like, that's not the
Yeah.
answer. It's like,
I,
it's because the embodiment isn't fully understood. It's like,
yes.
oh, it's this amazing
It's
thing
not
that's going to
just
like solve
movement.
your problems. And you're just like,
Yeah. Yeah. I want to do an episode on how to be embodied when your body isn't safe.
yeah,
We need to have a whole episode or a
I love
series
that.
of episodes. Yeah, because I think you're right. I think we romanticize
Yes.
potentially.
Simplify it. Ooh,
Yes.
yes.
This idea of like being, it's like the counterculture idea right now of like, we are so separated. Let's get out of our head and get into our body. It's like, well, maybe being in my body is like a big FU, right? Maybe it's like, I can't live in my body for very long because it is so uncomfortable. It has so much fear. It has so much pain. It has so much trauma. So I love you so much for acknowledging that. And I think it's a real thing. I was just thinking, because I know you and I together and separately have really leaned into ritual and ritualizing our not only our embodiment, but just like, what does our business need? What do we need? Where are we at? Like, creating some time and space. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. It doesn't have to be the perfect time, because I think it's important to acknowledge for ourselves, as Anne is suggesting, that we have seasons of our lives, and our lives all look a little bit different. You don't have to be able to get up at 5 a.m. and have 2 hours of, meditation and movement practice and journaling and reflection before you get your children up or before you walk the dog. Or it's like, well, that's just not the way life works, right? Like, maybe at some point. So how do we just create a little bit of intentional space for dropping into the experience of or dropping into the practice, right, of cultivating embodiment? And I was thinking, really, and this is what it often comes down to for me, is like asking the right kinds of questions. Like, what if you could just ask yourself in the morning as you're making coffee, or you drop the kids off at school and you're sitting in your car, and you just simply acknowledge, like, how am I listening to my body? How am I not listening to my body? Period. End of story. Like, or at the end of the day, as you're laying down to go to sleep and you're falling asleep and you're asking, today, how did I listen to my body? Today, how did I not listen to my body? Like, that is a very simple, accessible entry point for either subsets, right? If you are overly separated or overly integrated, or whatever the word is that I'm describing, you're just asking the question, right? You're like dropping a pin and you're saying, I'm just going to consider that my experience is more than maybe what I am consciously aware of moment to moment. And I think the more you ask the question, the more you become consciously aware, right? And that is a very powerful beginning. It's a very powerful beginning. I wanted to circle back to something that you were talking about, Anne, earlier, because it's been so impactful for me, which is working from a place of data. And so one of the things that you and I do is we meet every week. We have a operations meeting once a week, and then on the next week we do what we call a CEO meeting, and we're talking very deliberately about different things. But in those meetings, one of them, the CEO meeting mostly, we're really looking at like, how did we do? Like, what were the results of our efforts for the previous month? what are the results that we want to achieve for the coming month? And it's the data for me that it's like if you think of me as like a tornado of of like uh drive.
Yeah, energy.
Yeah. uh, then
But I like drive.
when Anne says, here's our goal for the month, and then we together decide like, okay, here's how we're going to reach the goal, like here's how we're going to break up the numbers, then I'm like, all of my energy and drive gets super focused on that data, and then I'm driven by that data, and then I can check in against the data as we move through. And so for somebody like me, that's very potent, and that has been very powerful and impactful in our business, right? It's like I need some overlaying of the data and the strategy and the analytics and the pragmatism, because I do tend to be very kind of heart driven and emotionally driven. And so I just wanted to kind of drop that in because it's also exciting because I don't feel so diffused.
Yeah, and I see that.
Yeah.
I really see that. And so I think to draw a contrast, like if you sort of align more with Chantil's way of operating, you finding a way of the data can be so helpful. And I think the energy of that sense of the energy being diffuse is like, it makes me think of like a mist. And
Yeah.
Mist is beautiful and nice. We spent some time in the world where there's lots of fog and mist, and it's stunning and gorgeous. But it's not gonna push something forward.
It doesn't pierce, right? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I definitely have experienced that in my professional life of like being too like in too many places at once. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
flighty. Let me be
No.
clear. Like I'm not describing a flightiness or a lack of follow through. Like I don't have that. But I do tend to do too much at once. And so the data allows me to really hone in and focus and take all of my creativity and my energy and my drive and say, I am dedicated to this, achieving this. We're going to talk more about that because what happens when you don't achieve the thing, right? That's a whole thing. Like when you don't achieve it the way you thought you would achieve it, can you stay open to how it is how it is being achieved, even though it's not the way you thought? But again, we're like, I should be writing this down. We're coming up with like multiple episode topics. What else? Is there anything on your mind specifically that you wanted to share? We're really, again, talking about practice and how do we begin to, like, what's our starting point for developing an embodied business? And what are the practices that Anne and I have found very useful? I do want to talk a little bit more about ritual, but what else? Is there anything else on your mind, Anne?
I just know, like, I guess I sort of, as you write your notes for these things, I'm like a voracious learner. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm, I think particularly with, kind of with supporting my children and doing the duties of the home, like cooking, a lot of times I'll, which I enjoy, and periods of high enjoyment and periods of less high enjoyment, but overall I do enjoy cooking. But I will say a lot of times, like I will then at those moments I'll be listening to some sort of like podcast or training that sometimes that is like, I just I want like a fire hose of information. And I don't know, it
Which
feels,
is
it's like
funny because I'm the opposite.
yeah, I want, like, give it to me, like, more, more, more. I get really excited about it. I want, like, it's like I'm insatiable. Like, I want
Mm-hmm.
more knowledge. Like, I just, um, but okay. So you have all this knowledge, but knowledge doesn't get you, like, doesn't, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, a bunch of knowledge isn't going to get you shit. Okay, just it's not
Yeah.
gonna get it for you. Like, you gotta act on it. And so to me, I think that's where the um the practice of embodiment comes in, because it, going back to the episode on interoception, like, interoception is this is this an intuition. It's like it's it's the ability to there's so much, you're getting so much information, and there's all these patterns that your conscious mind doesn't see or isn't aware of, but your unconscious mind is. And so then when you get the idea of, like, oh, I just listened to 10 different strategies, and then later, maybe tomorrow, I'm doing X, Y, or Z, and then bingo, I want to do that one. I don't know if that's coming because, I mean, there's no way I can learn that much that fast. So maybe
Right.
it's getting in on, like, a subconscious level. But it's just interesting how for me, like, so I keep learning, and that's what. But then I have to couple that with the embodiment. And so, what is the intuitive idea, the intuitive hit, and what am I doing to get my place in, so that I put down the desire for voracious learning, because I could just do that all day. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaving behind the, well, what is my body telling me? And what is my embodied experience sharing that is the right idea? And so I think for me, it was putting as much honor and attention on that embodied experience, like taking a walk or luxuriating more in a shower. It doesn't always mean I'm getting on a reformer or something. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
feeling my body with whatever it's doing, is what's supported, is, I think, just that it's a mindset shift of an honoring. Like, it's not just you shoving yourself with a bunch more new information that's going to get X, Y, or Z result. So,
Yeah.
and that took some time and some trust.
Yeah. I'm having so many ideas while you're talking. One
Good.
is as a journalist,
Mm-hmm.
by training, one of the very first things I did to build my online business was I started doing interviews. And I was just like, what you may know already and what you'll discover is I just do things and I don't really have all of it worked out, but I just do it. I just do it. I'm a big doer. So I started doing these interviews and recording them and having such a delightful time. And then, I turned them into something. But I remember I was interviewing a woman named Amy Taylor Alpers, and it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of I had done some work with her in a group setting, but never really spoken to her privately. And one of the things that she said that really stuck with me is like, you're like a bucket, and you put things in the bucket, right? Like you said, you're a voracious learner, right? Like, we want education, we want to be skilled. But the thing is the problem is with lots of knowledge is that when your bucket is full, the shit just runs over the sides. Like, it's not, you're not taking it in, right? You're not implementing it. You're not making use of it. And so I really have always held that as a like really powerful idea. Like, is my bucket just overflowing with information because my ego says I need lots, I need to be smarter in order to be of value, which is nonsense. I mean, you have to be smart enough, but really the issue is you have to be able to apply the knowledge. And so as you're speaking, Anne, I'm thinking about this kind of analogy of like, well, I think one of the reasons why you and I do so well together and we've had so much success together is like, on the input, you're like a wide open hose, right? You're like, wow, you're like taking it in, taking it in, taking it in. But what you have learned, and if I'm just going to like summarize, because we're kind of getting close to our, in wrap up here, is like, I think, at least from our experience separately and together from what I know of it, is that it's the ritual that has put this beautiful and important like constriction on your big wide open intake hose. So you take in and take in and take in, but you have grounded yourself in the ritual that works for you, that allows you a moment to stop and say, what is of value? What is in alignment with what I desire for myself and my business? And then you can choose. And to me, that is the experience of like, in that ritual, you bring all of yourself to that moment, right? It's like you're giving yourself permission to bring all of who you are to this moment of inquiry. Whether you do movement first, you go out on a walk first, you do it, like whatever it is, but you have to, that's the crux, right? Like that's the key, is create a ritual so that whether you are a huge intake valve like Anne, or you're a huge output valve like me, like the ritual of bringing your whole self to the discernment of how to take action is the absolute critical step. So my ritual is different than Anne's. Our lives are different. Our home lives are different. What we need is different. My movement routine is different than Anne's. But we have both supported each other in aligning with how, like, the ritual is critical. And whether you are meditating or you are doing yoga, or again, you're just going on a walk with your dog, or you're, whatever you're doing, whatever your tools are, whatever your strategies are, can you create a ritual from them to ground yourself and say, I am going to allow a moment, in an intentional moment every day, to bring my whole self to my business. That, I think, is the bottom line. That's like that's what that was all happening when you were talking.
I love that. Yeah, because everyone has their own, we're variable, right? And so everyone's going to have their way of coming into embodiment, and it might be a blend, and coming into how they're going to connect with their businesses and run their businesses. But I think there's lots more to explore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we will keep exploring. I wanted to share one thing, and then we have some, we have some announcements. We have some invitations. This book, Emergent Strategy, by Adrienne Marie Brown, Changing Worlds, is a book that was recommended to me a while ago. And in the beginning, she really talks about emergent strategy. And I wanted to read something, two things actually. Let's see. Many of us have been socialized to understand that constant growth, violent competition, and critical mass are the ways to create change. But emergence shows us that adaptation and evolution depend more upon critical, deep, and authentic connections, a thread that can be tugged for support and resilience, the quality of connection between the nodes and the patterns. And to me, that speaks to embodiment, right? The dropping into your full experience. And then she says, together we must move like waves. Have you observed the ocean? The waves are not the same over and over. Each one is unique and responsive. The goal is not to repeat each other's motion, but to respond in whatever way feels right in your body. The waves we create are both continuous and a one-time occurrence. We must notice what it takes to respond well, how it feels to be in a body, in a whole, separate, aligned, cohesive, critically connected. And I just love that, because it isn't being embodied and creating embodied business about, the acceptance of the whole, and how do we drop into that is the big question. Dun dun dun. Oh my goodness. So it is February 24th. You and I have some pretty cool shit going on, I have to say. And I'm more and more excited. But if you're listening, and it is February 24th, 2022, Anne and I have a really, I think, exceptional new offer that we've created to work with small groups of entrepreneurs in 2 different day-long intensives, where we are actually going to be supporting you in building and learning to sell a 21 or 28 day online or hybrid transformative short course program. And I love this for 2 reasons. One, because I really have built my entire online business on 28-day courses, which I've been creating for literally 10 years. And also because we know that learning is amplified in community, and action is amplified in community. And so below this podcast, and probably in the show notes, we'll put a link to the application for this work that we're doing. It's actually a 2-week container of support. So you'll be in community with Anne and I, getting mentoring and coaching for an entire day, but then you'll get 2 weeks of individualized support from us. And the objective is to help you actually create and learn how to launch and sell your heart's desire, whatever it is, from simple to complex. And all of this is deeply rooted in curriculum design and universal design for learning. And I'm just really, really excited about this opportunity. I think it's honestly one of the best things that we have created so far. Am I missing anything?
No, I don't think so. If you are watching this right around this time or listening to us, we do have a bonus available
Oh, yeah.
by the 25th. So this is specifically for people who are a little feeling like they're held back by tech, or are massively held back by technology. It freaks them the heck out.
Yeah.
We are giving away for that bonus a techless checklist, and also our suite of tech how-to videos with lots of embodied examples and metaphors that will make a lot of sense to you. Coming from someone who teaches movement. So yeah, we've just seen a challenge with some teachers just feeling like, it's just the boat has sailed. I don't know tech. I'm always like, look, if you can teach someone how to lengthen a vertebrae or turn their talus, like there's no reason you can't figure out tech in 2022. Like,
Absolutely.
so with some support. And so we're there for you. And so if you're able to fill out that application sometime on February 25th, 2022, you will have access to those bonuses.
Yeah, I think it is. As I was writing my writing this morning, I was really feeling, talk about like trying to figure out what your genuine voice is. I was deeply tapping into like the experience of feeling like I can't have the life I want potentially because I don't know how. And that is a terrible feeling. It's a terrible feeling. And I'm really just excited to help support teachers and embodied business owners and studio owners and whatnot to move past that, because it's just the first time. The first time is always scary, but once you do it the first time, it just keeps getting better. Sounds like I'm talking about sex, but I'm not. All right.
It does get better with practice. Okay.
On that note,
All right.
it's been a great episode. Thanks, Anne. Love you.
Thank you,
tons.
Chantel. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And once again, there you have it. That was a totally fabulous conversation. I think so far it's my favorite. One of the most potent actions you can take right now, if you love what we're doing, you love what we're saying, you're inspired and you are curious, is to share the podcast with people you love and to leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or our YouTube channel. We would be infinitely grateful for your support, and it means a lot to us. You can also get in touch with Anne and I if you have questions or guests or meanderings about the podcast you'd like us to consider, and you can reach us at Chantil, Chantill, or Anne, Anne, at pilatesmastersprogram.com. You can also reach out to us if you're interested in being a sponsor for the podcast, and you're going to get right in touch with our operations director, Emma at pilatesmastersprogram.com. Let us know if you have a thing that you think will align with what we're doing and what we're talking about, and we will have a conversation about if it's a good fit. And if it is, then we'll tell people all about it. We're excited to be in partnership with like-minded businesses and people who are offering services and products that are in support of developing and nurturing an embodied business and inspired brain. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. And then finally, as always, we'd like to give a lot of love and some shout out to our musician, Max Mackey, who wrote and performed the music that you hear on the podcast. Thanks, Max Mackey. If you have a project that you're looking for some custom original music for, you can get in touch with us, and we will put you in touch with Max about creating that special blend of perfect for your project. We look forward to hearing from you and to continuing to do this good work, and we'll see you next time.